But I have a special guest here, actually. So it was originally just going to be me giving you a talk, but it's going to be a lot better with Pratt here. So I actually went all the way back to my Berklee days. I actually had Pratt as a mentor of sorts back when I was at Berklee. And I was so bad at social skills or even so much as getting my career off the ground that instead of buying textbooks, I actually hired Pratt to help me with all my social skills and all my business skills and all that sort of stuff. I couldn't even shake someone's hand with any degree of confidence. So that's where I was at. And Pratt brought me to the level where now I'm doing work on those good indie games. And now I'm just your sweet indie trash boy. So that's what I do. That's a full-time job. So I'll let Pratt introduce himself a little bit more.
Hey everybody. So I'm a coach, I'm a professor, I'm a coach, and I coach people to do things they didn't think they could possibly do. Akash is a great example. So when Akash came to me, he was, as he said, just incredibly shy. Now he's speaking at South by Southwest, GDC, PAX, because he's got a lot of wisdom to drop on people. And what we're here to do today is to get you guys to a higher level. So before we get started, I need to know how real you guys are. How many people in the room this week are willing to do something to get paid?
Nice.
Okay, all right, that's a good start. Okay, the people who didn't raise your hand, are you willing to do something in 2 weeks? All right, there we go. All right, because that's it. What we really want to get into your head, and I've been teaching at the Berklee College of Music now for 21 years, and my whole gig with my students is, if you wait until you graduate to look for work, it's too late. I'm going to repeat that. If you wait to look for work until you graduate, it's too late. Because you have spent all this time in I hesitate to use the word, more passive, externally driven situation. As soon as you're looking for work, it's got to be driven by you. So the sooner you start driving yourself, the easier it is to build up a body of work, the easier it is to be employable. So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
So one question I want to ask you is, what are you doing right now, if anything, to actually push yourselves to actually start doing that beyond just your coursework? People are like, oh, I'm going to school. What do you want, a cookie? Like, that's like basic level stuff. You're all studying, you're all working hard, you're all doing it. What are you doing beyond it? We're going to give you some ideas today on how to actually start going beyond that. But relevant to what you were saying, Pratt, about pushing people beyond their expectations, on the opposite end, how many of you want to be a starving artist?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Okay, we have a couple.
Okay, so we got a hot
There's a long history of that.
Hot two people just want to be like, oh, I don't want to eat. I don't want a place to live. It's going to rule. No, none of you actually want that, but unfortunately when we actually take on an artistic career, we are inundated with the belief that that is something that we have to kind of resign ourselves to. That, oh, we're creative, therefore it's fun, therefore we need to be paid less, which is kind of insanity. We're doing something that's valuable. Every single one of you in this room is doing something of high value too. You're working on your craft here for something like 2 years. That's a long time. And you've been doing it before school, and you're going to be doing it after school too, and you're going to be working with people constantly. This is a high value thing. Don't let the people around you who say things like, oh, this is a low value thing, you have to be a starving artist just because it's fun. You can be fun and actually make a living. I know that's insane. I know that's a crazy thought. But every single one of you can do that. So we're here to actually get that mindset in you.
Yeah, and just to give you an idea of why and how you should be earning money, so it's estimated last year in the latest study I read, there are 2.8 billion gamers actively participating in the world, and estimated 2017 earnings was $108.8 billion of revenue generated by the gaming industry. Why can't you have some of that? No reason. Okay?
Think of how many Teslas you could buy with $100. That's like 4 Teslas. Oh my God, that's so good. So the first thing that we want to actually talk to you about today is actually going out there and meeting humans. I know, humans are gross. I get it. As an extreme introvert, anytime I take like a Myers-Briggs test or any sort of personality test, like introvert, 100,000%. That's me every single time. So I get it for those of you who tend to be more towards the introvert spectrum. I get it. Humans are weird, they're gross. Sometimes they have preferences that we don't like. Like, I don't get it when people don't like professional wrestling. It's weird. I just don't understand it. But the thing I will tell you is that actually meeting people, talking to people, making friends, people say networking and they get all, they think of it as sleazy, but really I think of it as making friends. But networking, talking to people, meeting people in the industry, or even outside of it, leads to actually more freedom. Typically, we see it as a big burden. We see it as like, oh, I have all this work to do. I don't want to go out and meet people. I don't want to talk to people. Oh, no. This is a huge component of what we do. I always liken being in the game industry to, it's like being in a band, where you kind of need to like, or at least generally like, the people who you work with or who you're around. And people need to know who you are before you can actually start, getting jobs and all that sort of stuff. For example, I could get a skateboard and go into a closet and close a door and do the sweetest 360 Christ stare you've ever seen, or you've never seen because I was in the closet and you just couldn't see it. And then I come outside and be like, hey, what'd you think? You're like, of what? I didn't see anything. But that's what every single artist tends to do when they're like, oh, if I just get good, people will notice me. Like, no, you're doing a 360 Christ stare in a closet where no one can see you. It doesn't matter how good you are, because then no one's going to actually see what you do. But if you have a list of people that you can talk to who know who you are, then when you have a portfolio, when you have the demo reel, when you have the website, whatever it is, then they'll be actually really receptive to knowing who you are, to actually hiring you, to working with you, because they already know who you are. But I know Cami was talking to us about how she actually pushes you to go to meetups, go to events, all that sort of stuff. Listen to her. That's so important. It's everything. It is the reason that I have jobs. It's the reason when I talk to any of my friends. I was just talking to a friend of mine, Ryan Cousins, who did art on Rec Room, which is the #1 VR game in the world. He did that Dragon Cancer. He's worked on Mortal Kombat. He's an artist here, 3D artist here. And when I texted him yesterday, like, what's your story? How did you break in? He was like, I was working on a bunch of shitty portfolios nonstop just to level up his skill. And then I started sharing it with people. I started sharing it with my professors. I started sharing it to people around me in the game industry. And that is what actually made the big difference. If he just worked on his portfolio and did nothing else but, it wouldn't have done anything. But he went out there, he started talking to people and sharing it.
And to give you another example of how easy and crazy networking can be, so I coach a lot of people who are in film composition. They work in LA and other cities. And one of my clients, who now is working with Disney and Star Trek and has a lot of great gigs, she got this great gig doing music for Pirates of the Caribbean for Disney in Japan. And she got that because she met a guy on Facebook who had some of the interests that she did, and he needed someone to do backup for what he was doing for Disney. So she gets the job helping him out because she met him on Facebook. And then so they're doing this music for a ride in Tokyo, right? It's not that big a deal, but it says Disney, so that's cool. So she, as a joke, takes a photograph of herself in front of a poster for the movie Pirates of the Caribbean and sends it to a friend. Okay? She's like, hey, I'm part of Pirates of the Caribbean. Not really, but kind of. Her friend has a roommate, and her friend's roommate sees the photograph, and her friend's roommate happened to be working on music for a Mexican theme park, and said, damn, she's worked on Pirates of the Caribbean. I wonder if she would work on my tiny little Mexican theme park that only has a budget of $50 million, right? So he hires her to do work for, coincidentally, a pirate ride in the Mexican theme park, right? And she posts that, and the people in Japan are like, damn, she's doing a lot of pirate work, and hired her to do more work in Japan for Pirates of the Caribbean, right? So the question isn't like, do you have an amazing portfolio, a perfect resume, a perfect LinkedIn page? The question is, how are you putting yourself out there? And we want to do a really simple exercise to show you how you all can network right here, right now. We would like volunteers to simply raise your hand and tell the room of future professionals of the gaming industry what is one skill you have that could be really valuable to other people in this room. Let's go. What have you got?
Character art, sculpting.
Okay.
Character and sculpting.
Creative rigging.
Louder.
Character rigging.
Can
Character.
everybody be listening, because you could use these people in the future?
Character rigging too.
The sequel.
Character artist. Very fast, very dedicated, creative character artist.
He's looking for work right now. Okay. Great.
Storytelling.
Great.
Animation.
Great. The first.
I can write reusable code. AI scripts.
Great.
Character design and animation.
Player controllers. Data management. Character design and modeling.
Character design, architecture, modeling, and color theory.
Great.
Environment artist.
Great.
People skills.
Hell yeah.
Networking code.
Great.
Terrain artist.
The ability to self-teach yourself.
Too quiet. I'm not the guy you're talking to. Talk to these people.
Oh, the ability to self-teach yourself.
Great.
Leadership skills. Character and creature sculptor.
Concept art and animation.
Great. Oops.
Simulation.
Great.
Prop design and modeling.
Excellent. So, you've all just demonstrated, and I'll just let you keep the microphone because I'm loud by nature. You've all just demonstrated that you can put yourself out there. You would be foolish to be looking forward and not be looking sideways. Because all of these people, so having taught at Berklee now for 21 years, I can tell you a lot of my students give each other work. A lot of my students have advanced each other's careers because they did projects together. They said, oh, this guy came through with me, for me in a pinch. And that's who they call later when they're in a professional crunch. So you guys should all be getting conversant, not only with what you do, but what these people do. So when you're in a job and they're like, oh, we need someone who does character modeling, you're like, I know somebody. Right? So that you've all just demonstrated that you're capable of networking today.
So we have basically an entire several game studios in this room. And actually, when I went to Berklee College of Music, a lot of those people I still work with to this day. The students that I hung out with, one example is Disaster Piece, the composer Fez. I met him in a hallway when I asked him, where's all the video game stuff at? I didn't know who he was. I didn't know who he was going to be. I just randomly ran into him. Then we worked on Hyperlight Drifter together, and we're working on other stuff together. So you never know what things are going to turn into when you start actually hanging out with people. And when you're out of school and you're all pursuing similar things, and you're working on it, it's actually really motivating to be around those people as well, because you all push each other and you have a little bit of friendly competition as well, which is really important. I'm sure a lot of you have been in that situation where you're like, damn it, Charisse, she's so good. I'm just gonna get better, I'm gonna get better. That happens all the time, and that's actually really useful. You need to be around that sometimes so you can actually push yourselves to new levels. So the next thing we want to actually talk about is actually how to talk to humans. I know, again, gross, disgusting, but it's a useful skill. It's just so handy. But as you go to these networking events, actually, how many of you have been out to networking events in general outside of the school? Okay, large chunk of you. This is good. Some of you are doing the come see, come saw sort of motion, but yes, this is good. This is actually a higher percentage than I've seen at most schools I've ever spoken at. At Berklee, it's like 2 hands, just kind of raise into the air. And like, I've been outside yesterday. A man looked at me and I ran. Like, that's usually what happens. But I get it. I used to be so introverted that if I heard somebody in the hallway, I wouldn't leave my apartment until I knew they were gone. And I'm sure a lot of you have done that before too. So I've absolutely been in that zone. But as you start actually going out to these places, and if you haven't done this already, I recommend bringing someone with you. Bring like a wing person alongside you, especially if it's new and it's a new scary environment that you're not used to. If you're going to a VR meetup for the first time and you don't know anyone there, bring a friend. Bring someone that you can actually go with, and then what you can do is as you approach these events, go to them, you can spread off from one another. It's really important that you don't just huddle together and talk to each other the whole time. You spread off from one another, you start talking to people at the event, you come back together and you decompress. And then you start talking to each other like, oh, I had a great conversation with this person over here, that corner is really cool, don't go over there, it smells real weird, whatever it may be, you can actually start decompressing and telling each other about how things are going. As you go to these events, it makes things so much easier and so much simpler. I still do this to this day. If I'm going to a networking event and I don't know anyone, I'll say like, hey, I want a friend, and I'll get a friend to come with me. It makes things infinitely easier, especially that at the end of it, you can both huddle together, and especially if you're both super introverted, like most of my friends are, we both talk to each other like, oh, I'm so glad we're not in there anymore, even though it was great and we got tons of work and whatever, no more humans, yay! This is so nice to decompress and actually talk about it. So that's one thing that we highly, highly, highly recommend you do.
Yeah, and for this, so you're all deeply enmeshed not only in the gaming industry and in preparing for careers, but you're all deeply enmeshed in gaming itself, right? And in order to succeed at the highest level of any game, you have to fail a lot. You have to die a lot. You have to start over and level back up a lot. And you guys are really familiar with that. You need exactly the same mentality for things like networking. Like, you're going to die a lot. You're going to start over a lot. And you're just going to keep going because you know there's a really good payoff. Now, just to give you an idea, you have to envision a payoff that matters to you. So I just want to hear from the room, what is a payoff so glorious and specific that you are willing to really put yourself out there in a networking capacity? What are some examples of things you want concretely? Yeah.
Wait, things I would incentive?
Give me one thing you really want that you need to work towards.
Wait, are you talking about a reward? I think I misinterpreted this.
For example, a very specific job, or a very specific company, or a very specific lifestyle that that job and company would facilitate for you.
Well, I'm definitely trying to get up to the point I'd be at Weta Digital or Weta Workshop to actually create creatures and characters there.
Fantastic.
Second plan would be my create.
Nope, don't even think about the second plan. Focus on the first plan. The second plan will come on the way.
Okay.
Legend of Dragoon 2.
What would your role there be?
It's designer.
Okay.
Oh, me. Training program at Pixar and or Disney.
Great.
I really want to be a trainee.
Having my own dev company.
Great.
Working as an indie game artist.
Great. So I want everybody else, I don't have time for everybody, think. The more specific it is, the better it is at taking you out of the house, taking you out of your dorm, taking you out of your college, right? If you can see talking to this guy whom you've never met as a stepping stone to that, you're much more likely to talk to him. So I want you guys really thinking, I really want a specific thing you do not want. Like my students, I'll take them to this exercise and they're like, I want everybody in the world to love my music. No, you don't, because then you're like playing on an elevator, or at Walmart. Like, no, you do not want that. Be much more specific. You want it to be, I want to be working for this company on this game with these people because their design on that game was unbelievable, and I want to be learning these skills that I don't currently have today. The more specific that is, the more it drives you to get out and do stuff where you're going to die over and over, and you're not going to care, because that's what you need to get up to that level.
I screwed up so many times at networking events, but I'm lucky because I used to have like really long hair down to my butt, like super metal hair. I used to be a touring metal drummer. That was my job. If you look at my Facebook, I was Nobuo Uematsu, the Final Fantasy composer's drummer, for a while. So there's pictures of me sweaty, like with next to this like old guy, just like, oh yeah, we just did a concert, woo. But so one thing I recommend to you is, as you actually start, going out to these things, you're making them useful for yourself, you have the specific goal, all that sort of stuff. Think of this on a super, super, super long-term thing. This is not the sort of thing where you're like, oh, here's someone that I could talk to at Wizards of the Coast. Oh, I'm going to talk to them once, and that's going to be it, and I'm going to get all the jobs. No, that's not how it works. Still to this day, I still have to network. I still talk to people. I still need to build all of those kind of stepping stones so that I can keep getting good careers and all that. But don't see this as using people. Don't be that guy, don't be that girl, the person who just runs up, shoves a business card into someone's hand and then sprints away, and when they look back it's just a log of like where they just were, or a dust-shaped cloud of that human. Don't be that person. Actually make friends, make real, genuine contacts when you do this, because this is a long-term game. This is a very, very long-term game. So something that I want to mention to...
So we're going to walk them through the process?
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Okay.
So something that I want to actually mention to all of you when you actually start going out and start talking to people and what to do is, actually before you even start doing that, is you want to actually start researching who's actually going to be at these events, who's going to be there, what sort of speakers are there going to be, if any, and check the invite list of the Facebook invite or the meetup.com invite or something like that. Check who's actually going to be there and research what their work is. What have they been up to? What have they been doing? Because if someone came up to you and said, oh, you've been working on that thing, you're like, oh, well, doesn't that feel nice? Oh my. Like when you all knew what Hyperlight Drifter was, you were like, woo, and that felt great. That felt dandy. I'm going to text people about that later. It's going to be great. So that's a really good feeling. So when you see people showing up to these events, which in Seattle there's a lot of them and a lot of people showing up, do some research. See who's going to be there. Check out what games they've worked on, if any. Doesn't matter if they haven't, but see what they've been up to. Show an interest in what other people are doing, and that's going to make a massive difference for you. And it's actually going to get rid of a lot of the shitty small talk too. I'm sure you've all been in the situation where people come up to you and say like, oh, so like, what do? You tell them, and then they ask, or you ask what they do, and they're like, oh, I'm a lawyer. You're like, oh, did you law anything good lately? Like, there's nothing to say to that statement. This will get rid of that because you've actually done a little research. You don't have to do it for every single person that's going to be there. If you're going to GDC with 60,000 people, you don't have to do all 60,000 people. That's insane. But do some research and see what people have been up to, and that's going to make a huge difference before you even show up and put your foot in the door.
Yeah, and the other thing is develop an ego protection strategy of moving up the pyramid of difficulty. So if there's somebody awesome, like Akash, that you want to talk to, you see that they're going there, don't start with Akash.
No, that actually it's fine with me specifically.
Don't start with Akash, okay? Find somebody who's, maybe a little bit above your level, and they're going to be there, and reach out to them and say, oh, I really like this thing that you've been working on. I hope to see you there. You're not asking for anything. You're offering. You find a couple people like low-hanging fruit, okay, intermediate players, medium, intermediate, right, and then high. And what you do is you train on the lower-hanging fruit, right? You're like, hey, how's it going? You try your little pitch, and your pitch is never about you. Do not sell yourself because people pull back. They can feel they're being sold to, right? Do exactly the opposite. Hey, I saw you were working on this thing. That's really cool. Tell me about it. Like, are you still working on that now? What's awesome about it? Who are you working with? Oh my God, that sounds amazing. And ask them questions that only someone who's a pro in the industry would ask. Now, this happens to my students at Berklee all the time. We have amazing people who come, and I see students, future professionals, blowing the chance of a lifetime. Ernie Isley, lead guitarist of the Isley Brothers, who had like hits in every decade since the 1960s. Ernie Isley comes, and so as one of the students, not from my class, says to him, can you tell me how to write a hit? And he's just like, no. Next. And another student says, can you tell me how to be, how to be awesome and play around the world? He's like, no, I don't know that. And then somebody else stood up, one of my students, so proud, and said, Mr. Isley, I just have one question. I know that usually your brother would write the lyrics and he would hand them off to you and you'd lay down some initial licks and a melody. But I know with Who That Lady, there was some story I read in an interview with you in Rolling Stone from like 1975 that you started with the lick and it was something I think you had on a bus. And he's like, oh yeah. Let me tell you that story. And in one of the most glorious moments of my life, Ernie Isley stands up, picks up his guitar, and walks everybody through the evolution of the lick to Who's That Lady, which is an amazing song. Quincy Jones comes, right? Two students, one not mine. Because he told me about this later. He's like, Quincy Jones, oh my God, I can't believe Quincy Jones is here. What am I going to say to him? How do I impress him? Meanwhile, my student walks up and says, Mr. Jones, I admire your work so much, but I just have one question. I don't understand how you got to be the producer for Michael Jackson's album Thriller. The studio had always been going with Maurice, and he was much stronger in that genre than you. You were more R&B. How did you get them to choose you over Maurice? This is deep knowledge, right? This person really did their homework. And Quincy Jones looked at him and said, that's an excellent question. Why don't we talk about it over lunch? Right? One of my students, again, he'd really been listening. John Mayer comes to play, right? And John Mayer's giving a clinic. And at the end of the clinic, he says, do you have any questions? And my student, who is a very shy Japanese student struggling with English, but he had been practicing for this moment, and he knows you never ask for anything directly. So he said, Mr. Mayer, I'm getting okay at my skill, but I'm not a master player. How would I get somebody who's at your level to play on a project of mine? And John Mayer says, well, what kind of a project? He says, well, I'm recording a demo. He says, well, when are you doing it? He says, 3 o'clock. He says, I'll play for you. And he recorded on the first semester student's demo, right? Because these people approached these professionals as professionals. They asked questions and they made comments that only professionals would know to make. They did not fanboy or fangirl all over them, which is death at a networking event.
Specificity is everything. And again, I had the luck of actually, so I used to be the long-haired person. When I started going to these networking events and screwing up, I actually cut my hair and then reintroduced myself to those people because they forgot who I was. So they thought I was a new person. So I went through all those fuck-ups too. But we are going to cut off a lot of that time for you, hopefully, so that you don't go through that and you don't have to cut your hair to pretend to be a new person because you screwed up so bad in the past. But that happens. Don't do the fanboy fangirl thing because it's happened to me. It's absolutely happened to me, and people come up to me, and that's fine. I'm cool with taking selfies and all that. That's great. But they don't ask any questions. They just take a selfie and then look at me for a while. I'm what do you want? Is we cool? And then I kind of shuffle away as fast as I can because it's just so, it just feels weird. I'm sure that's happened to all of you at some point where you're just this person's weird. I don't want to be around this weirdo. Don't give off that vibe. Ask specific questions, approach things as a pro. Don't do the sort of thing where when you talk to someone, say I'm an aspiring artist. You're an artist. You've been here for a while. You've been working on your craft. Don't sell yourself short when you actually start approaching these professionals because it's just not a good feeling.
Right. So let's review. First of all, you're going to find out events. And if you can't find the events, Cami has this amazing list of all the events. She is always trying to get more people to go to events. So you can use Cami. Cami is part of the network that you want to build. Right? And Cami not only wants to help you identify jobs now, but she will stay in touch with you after you graduate to bring you back here to share the amazing wisdom you have, right? So you look at Cami and other people here and other teachers as part of the network that you're investing in here, okay? So you figure out where the events are. You research a few people before you go. Ideally, you make a short and specific connection to them. Please never on LinkedIn hit just connect and say nothing. Please never do that. I delete those messages all day long. It is extremely random, incomprehensible, and rude. I have no idea why you want to connect. I have no idea who you are. We have no mutual connections. You're not giving me anything to hang on. Why are you just trying to rack up numbers? Right? Whereas, I had a guy who said, oh my God, I'd love to connect with you. I saw a talk that you did with Akash on this date, and you talked about this, and that's exactly what I was like, absolutely want to connect with you, right? Be specific. So then you go to the event, low-hanging fruit, practice on some lower people, get your jam down, reconvene with your wingman. Okay, I survived. What worked? What worked, right? You sort of do the intel sharing, go back out there for another round, and my advice to you is, after you've done more than you've ever done before, which for many of you may be connecting with one person, leave. Leave. Leave on a high note. Because your brain is looking for survival threats. And if you're going and you fail, and you leave on the fail, your brain is like, never network again! It was terrible! But if you take that gaming mentality, I'm going to die until I make it to the next level, you're like, die, 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 shook my hand, said hello, I'm out of here, right? Because then you're telling your brain that I succeeded. I persevered, I died, I persevered, I succeeded. The next networking event you go to, you try to talk to 2 human beings successfully, and then you leave. The next one, 3, and then you leave. Right? So you're racking up points. You're racking up wins. You want to get better at it, and that is why the first ones you go to, I recommend the first networking events you go to be events that you don't care at all about because you've got nothing to lose. You're an illustrator and you go to one for musicians, right? Where you never want to work with these people necessarily, but you're just practicing on them to build up your skills, to build up your confidence, because you don't need any of those people for your future. That's who you practice on. You do not practice on a high-value target.
I made that mistake.
Okay?
So something I'll recommend to all of you, though, this is probably the most important thing when it comes to networking. You go there, you talk to people, you have a wing person, you go home. This is everything. What do you do afterwards?
Cry.
Yes, you can cry. That's totally fair, valid. All of your feelings are valid. Yeah, give me an idea.
Follow up.
Ah, yes, follow up. A+, locked in grade for this person. Never needs to try again. All their assignments get A+. I decree it so. So following up with the people you meet and had a conversation with is literally the most important thing that you can possibly do in this entire industry. I just made you all 6 figures, and maybe even 7. I'm serious. I'm not joking. Literally every job I've ever gotten is me going to an event and sending an email within 24 hours. This is really important. Don't wait 4 weeks and go like, hey, do you remember me? Don't do that. I used to do that. It's a terrible idea because they don't remember you and they won't respond. Follow up within 24 hours. Say it was great to meet them. Mention something from the conversation, and then you're out. Don't do the sort of thing of emailing them and saying like, hey, I need a job. Don't do that. I did that. I've made all the mistakes. Ooh. It's not a good scene. Email them, let them know it was great meeting them, mention something you talked about, and you're done. That's it. It can be a 1-line email. That's it. This is everything. 1, it makes it so that people remember who you are. 2, this is how I remember everybody's name. If I follow up with someone, it's in my brain forever. So when I see them 3 years from now, I'm like, oh, hey, Josh, how are you doing? They're like, oh, did you remember that? 1, it makes me look like a creepy Moriarty type, which is the vibe I want to give off, absolutely all the time. And 2, it's just a good thing to have. It's a good thing to know and remember and have that kind of mental Rolodex going on. This, if you follow up with 1 person but talk to 500, that's fine. It's that important. It is so crucial when it actually comes to talking to people. So next time you go to one of these events, or even if it's your first one, follow up with even just 1 person, like we were talking about. Make it easy. You don't have to. You'll probably have a stack of business cards at some point of 400 names, and you want to just shove that into the garbage can. Do at least 2 or 3 follow-ups with people you had great conversations with. If it's a mediocre conversation, or you didn't even like them, you don't have to follow up with those people. It's totally okay. But always, always, always get in touch afterwards. So huge.
And then bonus points, if you're replying by email, so Cami wants everybody to have a good LinkedIn headshot, which I highly recommend. It does not have to be a photograph. I've seen some people with amazing illustrated headshots. Fantastic, right? Don't use an avatar, please. But have a headshot. When you follow up to them, bonus points if you include a small headshot below your signature as something professional, like you have your headshot, and then you have, Akash Thakkar, audio demigod, working here, right? And it's just like your regular signature. It's nothing special. You're not doing this giant photograph. You're not doing a selfie with them. But you got that photograph, which tells them several things. First of all, you're a pro. Second of all, they don't have to struggle to remember who you are. You've included a photograph, which exactly no one else does when they follow up after a single meeting. So you're more professional than most people. You're positioning yourself as a professional because you've got a nice headshot or illustration with signature, and you're including the photograph, which takes the stress off of them of trying to remember who the hell you are.
Sorry, real quick. When you say don't use an avatar,
Don't use an avatar when in professional correspondence.
What does that mean? Does that mean
Don't use something that doesn't look like you.
well, what if somebody drew you or
Does it look like you, and will it help people remember who you are after a networking event?
okay, it's like a caricature is fine.
Fine, absolutely, yeah.
But don't put up a picture of like Goku
Yeah.
or something. Like
Yeah,
don't put it.
which I've seen people do.
Oh, God,
Yeah.
The amount of Vegetas I see, just so many Vegetas. I get it. Vegeta's the best character on Dragon Ball. Fight me, but the amount I see, just don't do that. Yeah.
So wait, wouldn't be putting it on a business card also be wise? Is that too much?
Super smart.
Super smart.
Okay.
Yeah. Even if it's an illustration, again, that's totally fine.
Yep.
But yes, so people remember.
Illustration that
who
looks
you
like
are.
you,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. And all of it's cool because you're all artists, so you can actually do that. It's
And
great.
if you're not an artist, you can find an artist here who would do that work, and you're already starting to network, which is just a good gig.
Yep.
And if somebody says, oh my God, your illustration is awesome, you say, he did it, right? And you give them that person's name.
Always give credit.
Always give credit. Huge.
Okay, so one thing that we want to challenge you with, this is really important. We asked you at the very beginning, how many of you want to actually get paid for this work? And that's everybody, yeah? So, one thing that we want to challenge you with, even if it's not in the next week or in the not the next 2 weeks, we want you to try and get paid for something over the course of the summer. This is huge. We want you to get paid for something, or we want you to try to get paid for something. Because all the time we will encounter free projects. This is a common thing for artists in any sort of discipline. We'll encounter a lot of free projects, student projects, whatever it may be, or just free projects out in the world. That's cool, you should keep doing them. Great way to build experience, totally fine. My mindset on that is you can totally work for free, but don't work for nothing, so make sure you get something out of it if it is a free project. But we want you to actually start asking people for money when it actually comes to charging for your work. Now, how many of you have answered the question, have, like, when someone asks you, so how much do you charge, have the perfect answer in the entire world and everything works out perfectly and you're never scared? Awesome. Okay, so 0%. Fantastic. That's good and normal, because unfortunately for a lot of us as artists, when we are asked, like, so how much do you charge? Our gut response is like, $4? And it's like you're working on Avengers Infinity War and that's all you charge. Like, that is our gut instinct, is to undercharge ourselves and completely lowball ourselves. So what we want to start getting you into the habit of is, if you haven't charged anyone ever before, you've never made $1, that's totally fine. We want you to get you into the habit of starting to ask for something.
Let's do a quick poll. No blame, no shame, okay? Because this is the floor. Raise your hand if you've never gotten paid for your work. Okay,
Good.
You guys can
Awesome.
only go up, right? Your fees can only get higher, right? You have the easiest job in the room. Now raise your hand if you have been paid. Now raise your hand if you have been paid what you think your work is worth. Right.
A lot of hands go.
Okay, there we go. Right? That's what we're talking about. You are not charging anybody. You are offering high-value work, which you will be compensated for. Nobody is doing you a favor by paying you. You are offering high-value work, dedication, and sweat, for which you will and should be compensated.
And just because you're a student doesn't mean that that's not the case. You don't approach this from the mindset of, oh, I'm just a student, therefore. Because when you get out into the real world, where's that mindset go? It stays with you. You actually want to start charging as if you're a professional. That doesn't mean your rates are $1 million per one illustration. That doesn't necessarily mean that. Your rates will reflect your skill and experience and all that sort of stuff. That's fine. But it does mean you are actually starting to charge. When people ask what your rate is, you're able to give a number. And we're going to go through a little thought process of how you can actually start getting those rates out there. Now, something that Pratt taught me, this helped me a ton when I first started. When we first started working together, I was like, I'm working on nothing but free projects. I want to start getting paid, and I had no idea how to go about doing it. And you asked me, what ratio do you want? Do you want how much free work do you want versus paid work? What's the ratio there? Right at that point, it was 100% free. I was like, oh, maybe 40% paid and 60% free. And like, that was scary to me. That terrified me. And within like 8 months of doing what we're about to tell you, it was 100% paid. All of my projects were paid while I was still in school. This was really important. I wasn't making tons of money. I wasn't like buying tons and tons and tons and tons of like Facebook stock before it got big. None of that. But I was making some degree of money. That was really huge, because when I got out into the real world, charging people, that was a habit. I could do it. And I can still do it. I still use the same stuff we talked about like 8 years ago to this day. So when people ask you, so how much do you charge? There's a few things you want to think about. One, if it's in person, if you just met that person and you know nothing about that game, don't give an answer right then and there, because you know nothing. Don't. That's a big mistake, because as soon as, if someone says like, oh, we're working on this kind of game, gives you no information, how much do you charge? You're locked into that number. If you say that and they're interested in working with you, you don't have enough information yet. So in that circumstance, I recommend saying, okay, you know what, I want to hear more about this project. Why don't we talk about it more over email, Skype call, just later, defer it to later, because also your lizard brain is firing up at that point. You're like, huh, you get real scared when someone asks about that good money, that good paper. You want to chase that paper, but you're like, oh, I'm so scared. I'm so scared. That's normal. That's human. That's a big part of this process. So you want to defer that conversation to later. Next up, when you actually start talking to them, email, Skype, whatever it may be, what you want to do is actually when someone asks you how much you charge, all of you will have what I call a tummy number, a gut number that will actually pop up. You'll be like, oh, okay, I think I could charge maybe $100 for this. Some number will actually come to your gut. You'll have some sort of gut instinct. It's always too low, always. But what you can do is get that little tummy number, the little gut number that comes up, and you can use that as kind of a baseline. Okay, let's say I'm going to charge $100 for this. I'm going to bump it up to $300. Okay, cool. Let's just like add some stuff on top of it. And you will find your rate through trial and error this way with the script that we're about to give you. What you can do is say, okay, like tummy number is 100. I want to charge. I'm going to like bump this up so it scares me. You should always quote in a way that scares you. If your number's not high enough that it scares you, you're effing up. It's too bad. You gotta scare yourself too. You want to charge 300. Okay, that's your new rate. Well, you can say something along the lines of this. Well, for this sort of work, I would charge $300. Now, I know you're a small indie company, or you're getting funded on Kickstarter, or this is a passion project, whatever it may be, you can insert a qualifier. How much of that number do you feel comfortable paying?
It's a really powerful brain trick, because you've given them something to react to, which puts pressure on them, and then you've immediately taken the pressure off, and you've given them autonomy instead. I've been using this with clients for years, clients who couldn't afford my full fee. I never get a ridiculous offer. Like if I say my fee is here, nobody offers me this. People are like, would you accept this? And I'd say, if you're going to show up every time, absolutely, right? And then they will pay more, right? Did you work this in over time? You establish that gut number. You go above that gut number, the same way that you don't want to be playing the same level of a game over and over again. You don't want to be charging that same rate over and over again because it doesn't challenge you to improve. So raise that number. That's your number. When somebody, the only modification I would give to Akash's script is, you say, for something like that, first of all, before you even say that, I would say, tell me about your game. Tell me about your vision. What is it you want? Get them deep into their sweet stuff, where they're just like, oh my God, this game is going to change the world. It's going to be so awesome. Why? Like, what are your inspirations? Like, oh, I love this. Like, get them in that spot, because when they're in that spot, defenses come down. And your job is to show that you would be an amazing ally for that project. You would be a champion, like, oh my God, that's a great idea. Which game engine are you using? Oh my God, that's great. Do you know that? Oh, that's great. Oh, I'd love to work on that. That'd be great. Now, you haven't even talked about a number because you've created a relationship. You've shown them that your goals and their goals are aligned. They are much less threatened by you. They're much more open to paying you because they see you now as a potential member of a team. So now they're not evaluating you on your dollar cost. They're evaluating on your opportunity offer, right? So then, how much would you charge? Feel free to say $300, but don't go immediately to that second thing. Say, for something like that, I love your project. God, I'd move my rate down to $300, right? So you've just done a little mental jujitsu on them, right? They're like, down? Wow, 300 is a bargain. And then you look at them and you wait. You wait! Because that's when you have the most power. When you don't think, 25 would be fine. You wait. And you let them think it out. Their risk-benefit analysis. And they, I love you. I love what you're saying. It's just more than I can afford. Then you go to Akash's play. Then they are deeply indebted to you for coming down from your original rate, which is way above your actual rate. And you've come down a little more. Now they are bonded to you. You are blood brothers, blood sisters, right? Which is what you need to be a member of a team, okay? So that's what I want you guys to be thinking of. Here's what I've charged before. I'm going up a level or two. I'm going to tell them that that's actually lower than my actual rate because you probably have been undercharging for the value of your work for a long time. And then if they sweat and they can't meet that number, give them a little wiggle room.
And the cool thing is, let's say your tummy number was 100, you asked for 3, and they meet you at 250. You made $150 extra you never would have had otherwise. This is huge. We just made huge 6 figures. Like, that's how this works.
That's how you keep getting up.
I used this script until like 2015 15, maybe-ish, somewhere around there. Now it's to the point when you get more advanced, you just say, here's my number. And then you wait. You wait. You don't respond back and say, actually, let it sit. I know it's terrifying, but as you become a pro, that's what you need to do. You need to say, here's my number, here's how much I cost, eventually. But at first, use what we just told you, and that's gonna be a huge, huge, huge help for you. So again, as a reminder, defer the conversation until later if you know nothing about that project. And even if you do, it's worth deferring because your lizard brain is gonna fire and you're not gonna give an accurate response in that immediate circumstance when someone asks how much you charge the first time you've heard about that game. It's just not a good situation to be in. Then use our script. If once you start talking about it more, you get into it, you ask them about it. One thing I recommend you ask about is, what are your expectations for this game for both the industry and yourself? Ooh. People start opening up to that. And I have tons of emails in my inbox of people who are very high level, names you know that I've coached on how to get gigs and get paid more. And they email me and say, like, as soon as I asked that, this huge client opened up to me. I didn't think I was going to get the job, and then I got it after I asked that question. Because again, it bonds you to them, makes everything so much better and so much easier. So how many of you are going to try over the next 1, 2, or the whole summer, whatever, to actually start getting a paid gig?
Okay, now look around the room. Keep your hands up. Everybody look around the room. Everybody with their hand up is someone you could practice this on. You would be foolish to do this without practice. Role play. Play hardball with each other. Do it over and over again so that you, just like any move in a game, you get really good at it. Okay, now you can put your hand up.
It takes time.
Yeah.
Akash, will you just say that sentence over again? That one that
Yeah, the comfortable things. Okay, so you can say, as you mentioned earlier, I'm coming down from my normal rate. You know, I think I could come down to $300 for this project. So now that you know that number, and I know you're a Kickstarter project or you're an indie project, you can insert a qualifier. How much of that number do you feel comfortable paying? Just as a little reminder, keep that in your quiver because it's going to be useful for years and years and years. So we're going to wrap up and do some Q&A. Does that sound good?
Yeah, absolutely.
So before we wrap up, do you have any last points that you want to kind of recap?
Really simple. If you're not failing, you're not trying. If you're not failing, you're not growing. You're not afraid of failing in a game, so don't be afraid of failing it with these new skills, whether it's network or charging. Don't be afraid of it. You've got nothing to lose. If someone says no, you didn't get money you didn't have. You've lost nothing, and you've gained experience. So try to become as fearless in developing these skills and having that growth mindset with these skills, being forgiving of yourself. It's going to take time, the same way you are in every game you've ever played.
Rejection is a big part of this process. I still get rejected maybe 50% of the time when I send over a number. And they're like, ooh, that's too expensive. I'm like, cool. And that's it. That's the end of the conversation. But I'll say like, oh, here's a friend. Here's someone else you can hire. Here's someone that I can recommend to you in that case. Spread some good karma around. But as you start doing this, you will lose projects. I want to make that very clear. You're not going to get a 100% success rate. But the higher paid you are, the less clients you actually need. And the key is that you do this, everything that we talked about consistently. Mm-hmm. Don't show up to one event. Show up to hundreds. Even if you show up for 5 minutes and you're like, you know what, I'm good. That's fine. That's a great place to start. If you charge just 1 or 2 clients, if you start using these scripts or just trying your own way, whatever it may be, that's what we want you to do. We want you to be consistent and we want you to practice it because literally everything we talked about is a learnable skill. You don't have a business chromosome that just teaches you how all this stuff. That's not how this works. This is all learnable. It's all practicable. So thank you all so much for coming today and being so energetic and so cool. We're going to do a little Q&A. Thank you. Thank you.
Akash, I remember from last year when you came in, you mentioned that in Hyperlight Drifter, you worked on some of the boss noises, especially one with your blood, noise from your blood.
Yes.
What gave you the inspiration to use that?
Stop. That's a networking question.
This guy just nailed it.
Bravo.
Nailed it. Yeah, so I'll repeat the questions.
Louder.
So what he just asked was, for Hyperlight Drifter, I did all the monster sound effects or my voice or something from this angelic form you see before you. But what I did for the last boss is the ambience of that last boss battle is my own blood. It is the sound of my own blood because I built a microphone from a stethoscope and used that to record blood going through my veins and use that as like the last boss. And ooh, yeah, I'm a weirdo. Just heads up. Yeah. So yeah, when you play the last boss, it's all about that. But the thing that gave me inspiration for that is I need to do something fucked up for this. And that's literally it. Like, because for the last boss, Alex Preston, the head of the program or the head of the team, was like, this needs to sound different from everything else in the game. I was like, all right, I got you, boo. I got you. So like for days, I would sit like, what can I do? Like, I need to record some weird sound. How can I record a sound that no one hears regularly? That was like the first thought process. And then I remember at some point, literally, I was just sitting at my computer. I was like, blood. Like, that's what came up, and I was like, how can I record blood? Okay, a contact microphone won't work. Okay, all my cousins are doctors because I'm Indian, so therefore they all have stethoscopes. So it's true. And I actually asked them how to use a stethoscope, so now I know how to use one because thanks to them. So I actually bought a $7 stethoscope on Amazon. I was like, what if I cut off the little ear hole thingies and shoved a microphone into it? Oh, I'm recording blood. Sweet. So it was a lot of trial and error too, but that was like the initial thought process of like, what's something no one's heard before? Great question. You can point them out.
How would you recommend starting commissions?
So in what way? How would you like for what types of projects? What are you looking for?
2D art, either for video games or just posters.
Okay, so the question is, how would you recommend starting commissions? It's like what we talked about earlier, is actually going out there and meeting people. But for commissions specifically, posting your work, showing it, is a really big part of people hiring you to make them avatars, 2D art, posters, that sort of thing. So sharing it on things like ArtStation, which you've mentioned earlier, even Twitter. Twitter's huge for game artists and game developers in general. It is the social network that has all game developers and Neil deGrasse Tyson. Like, that's what Twitter is. That's all it is at this point. It kicks ass. So show your work as often as you can so that people can see it. And if someone approaches you, you can now charge for it, so you can use all this good stuff. So that's how I'd recommend starting to do it. Show your work as often as possible.
And by the way, when they reach out to you, don't fall for the how much do you charge. Answer them, say, what drew you to me? Like, what do you like about my work that would work for your project? Huh. You got them. Okay? And then you can say, well, so this took this much time, this piece took this much time. What level of quality do you want for your game? There's no way you're getting free after that. Like, they are going to have to pay you.
Okay.
As well they should. Yeah. Let me go to you and then you.
Do you have like a website or something where you post your talks that people go back to?
My website.
Yes, yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so we've got 2 mini programs that are up and free, and Akash will send the link to Cami, who will share it with the larger AIE world. And then we got a program that we're rolling out this summer.
Yeah. So if you want to learn more about networking and freelance stuff, it's not just game audio, even though that's the world I'm in. It applies to everything. We have 2 free online courses just on my website that you can just sign up for. Mm-hmm. Totally free, like no catch.
Mm-hmm. Except blood. We do make you get blood.
I take just a little.
Yeah.
What DAW do you use?
So what digital audio workstation I use? So all of them is the actual answer. But if you're asking like which ones I use most frequently, Logic Pro is like probably my favorite, or Nuendo has become a recent awesome super.
Also, what's your favorite VST?
Favorite VST? Serum, which is an awesome synthesizer.
Amazing.
It's a synthesizer that people like Deadmau5 stuff use. So that's my favorite. I make like laser gunshots in that thing all the time.
Let me go over here.
So when you work with a client, what do you look for in like a good way that they explain what they want from you? Whether like, what's the best way to convey what you want from an audio designer so that you get the quality you're looking for? Is it good?
This is Akash's favorite question.
Yeah. So the question was, what should you convey to someone like an audio designer to get what you want out of them, basically? The thing is with audio people, and I think the same. Tell me if the same is true for you. I actually really want to know. We love emotional language, and is that true of you? So we want some things like so Alex Preston, Hyperlight Drifter guy, came up to me and said, "I want this to sound so lonely." Love that stuff. Don't say things like, "Oh, we want a violin here." as soon as you start mentioning instruments, we shut off our brain and say, this person doesn't know what they want. Even if you are the new Beethoven, we won't trust you. We'll just say, they don't know, violin's my world. Violin's my world, this is my house. So what we want is emotional language from you. Make this sound lonely, make this sound desperate. Use any words you think would work really well, but then leave it up to them and use those sorts of tonal. And if it's not working, if things like you're like, oh, this isn't lonely enough, this isn't desperate enough, whatever it may be, then what I recommend you do is use reference. So like, you know what? I don't want you to make this sound exactly like Gears of War, but here's a sort of tone that I'm going for. That's what I recommend you do. But first, emotional language is everything.
Great. Let me get all in the back with the headset.
Oh, hi. If I recall, you said that you were a teacher at
Yes.
Berklee. What exactly do you teach over there?
Yeah, my students all ask me that.
What is I teach at Berklee?
So there's what I'm paid to teach and what I actually teach. So I am paid to teach a number of courses in the liberal arts program. This video is not going online, right? I am paid to teach a number of courses in the liberal arts program, which are designed to help people get degrees. What I actually teach them is how to survive and thrive in the music industry. And I ask them to start acting like professionals immediately, to not call me dude, because that won't work in the industry, to send me emails as if they were emailing a professional, to come to my office. I make my students leave my office all the time because they come into my office and they're like, hey, so I'm like, you're fired, get out. Come back in. And they'll go like, can I come? I said, yes, come back in. And they'll be like, how are you? I'm like, better, get out. Come back in. Until they're like, you said a very interesting thing the other day that I'd like to follow up on for an interview I'm about to give. And I'm like, sit down. Right? It's you are telling people all the time how seriously to take you by how seriously you're taking your encounter with them. If your body language is all schlumpy, you're wearing a shirt that you haven't changed for the last week,
Sounds like me.
right? You haven't taken a shower in a week. Like, you're just basically telling them, you don't matter to me. So why should you matter to them? You got to step up your game for any professional encounter. So I make all of my students do this. When they're going to meet a pro, they send me an email before they meet. I say, how are you dressed? What are you bringing to the table? What's your offer? What's your ask? Right? And they enter and they know why they're there. And the pro can feel it. They're like, okay, this person stands out because they're not acting like I'm their dude. Right? So that's just what we want you guys to be thinking about is, don't wait to graduate. Don't wait for someone to go, oh my God, you're amazing. I love everything you do. Stay exactly the way you are. Will you work for me for a lot of money? Right? It's not going to happen. Right? You have to show them what you have to offer. So that's your job while you're here is to practice, fail, practice, fail, practice, fail, and succeed. And then repeat. In the back. Yes?
talk to clients, people, other people. Like I have.
You're doing a great job right now.
Like I have ADHD and Asperger's, so my spelling and some of that stuff is really bad.
So own it. That is one of the most powerful things you can do. Feel free. Like I had a student who came up to me, and I've been teaching it for 21 years, and he says to me, listen, I score somewhere on the Aspergian scale. I have difficulty communicating with people, but I'm trying to get better. I'm like, you are my ideal person. You are presenting yourself. You are unapologetic about who you are, but you're not asking me to make to just bend over backwards and try to do a lot of strange things. You're just telling me who you are, but then you're communicating. So be who you are, and don't apologize for something that you have no control over. Just say, hey, this is a fact, so there may be some difficulties in my communication. And then you can say, do you mind if I communicate by email, which I'm more comfortable with? Like, that is an awesome strategy. And the world is changing in that regard in a lot of ways where it's not the impediment to professional development that it used to be, especially in things like in the game audio, in the game industry in general. I'm seeing a lot of breakthroughs happen there. So why don't you just be the guy who succeeds? Hold on, wait, there's some delayed. Yes. With the glasses and the gray shirt. That's you.
All right.
You're just checking, make sure you have glasses.
So, one of my favorite developers, and from what I hear, all around nice guy, was collaborating with Hyperlight Drifter, Pseudo 51.
Oh yes, Suda.
I was wondering, did you get to meet him and he has a nice
Fanboy.
So.
Did you get a job from him? Because that music is always so dang.
So Suda is as weird as you think. This isn't a character that I don't think he might as well be walking around in a Halloween mask all the time because he's such a weirdo and I love it. Yeah, he's like the dark Miyamoto. He's like the anti-Miyamoto. In like the best way. He's super creative and weird and then does like game trailers of him sitting on a toilet. This is how he works. But yes, so Suda is a cool guy, super nice, and when you meet weirdos like him or Swery or Hideo Kojima or people like that, you're like, oh, this person's like really weird and awesome, but you just fall in love with them right away. I think it's because, like you were just saying, they're unapologetic about who they are, and that's what actually draws people to them so well. But yes, they're all great people.
Some people can have to leave. Stay where you are if you
Yes.
can stay. We want to take a group photo.
Of all of you.
Okay? So, it's a giant multi-person selfie. So, here we go. Right? Almost. We're almost on it. Really close.